Hello, and welcome back to episode number 2 of Tank and Maddie's CNA Chronicles. I'm Maddie,
And I'm Tank.
and I want to remind you to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Working on a website, putting together a newsletter, and we need all of y'all to subscribe. So today we're talking about shit and other stuff. Go ahead, I cut you off last week.
Well, last week we were talking about poop and all this, and I've had a few patients where one patient, now this, I'm just letting you guys know, when you become a CNA, this is part of your job. I had one patient, she was a heavier weight patient, about 400 pounds. She had issues pooping. So I had to go behind her and literally push her butt in so that she could push the poop out. By the time she was done, she had a boulder of a shit. I'm not exaggerating. Imagine a foot-long brown, and that's what she came out with. I'm like, did you give it birth? Did you name it? Because this thing was huge. And then just about, I want to say about 6 months ago, I was with a nurse, and I had asked her to help me because this patient was restricted, and I had to change her. Well, I had to, I have no idea how this little 120-pound lady shit out a giant football shit. I wanted to take a picture of it. My nurse said no, but this thing was huge. So this is the stuff that you get to actually have some fun with. This is the fun part of being a CNA, is you get to see some of this shit that you're like, what the hell? How did that come out of you guys?
So I don't think everybody would agree with you that the shitty part is the fun part.
No, it's not always the fun part, because I've had some that's like, what the hell? It was like, I've had it, and I'm not exaggerating, guys, when I say this, and it will happen to you too. I've been shat on, and I've been pissed on. It's part of the job, trust me. But I have actually seen BM bowel movements, loose bowels, literally coming off the edge of the bed because it was so much coming out of them.
That's a lot of shit.
That is a lot of shit.
I had a lady a few months ago who she put on her bathroom light. And we all know that when the red bathroom light comes on, it's supposed to be an emergency. So I go running down. It wasn't my hall, but the bathroom light was on. So I went to help. I go running down the hall, and she's in the bathroom, standing, she's straddling the toilet. But she's facing the wall.
I remember that.
And her ass was towards me. And she said, I need you to stimulate my rectum so that I can use the bathroom. And I said, nope, not doing that. And she's like, no, you don't understand. That's the only way I can use the bathroom. And I said, well, who does that for you at home? And she said, well, I do. And I said, well, then what makes you think here in our facility, where our goal is to get you better to go home, that I would do that for you? And she's like, it just take a minute. She said, if you just stimulate my rectum, I'll poop and we'll be done. I'm like, nope, not doing that. Sometimes you just have to say, ever since that very first incident that I talked about last week, I learned at some point there are things you have to say, nope, I'm not doing that.
And trust me, that's not in our jurisdiction. That is the nurse's job, not our job.
There was another lady who came in who was also a bariatric patient who asked for a female urinal. And I went and got it for her. And I handed it to her. She said, no, you have to hold it. And I said, nope, not doing that either. I said, I am not holding it.
Issues when you're in working rehab. This is one thing that rehab patients don't understand. When they come in, sometimes they do think this place is the Ritz-Carlton, where they can get everything pampered. Rehab is a term of getting better to go back home. So some of our CNAs do pamper a little too much, and that's where our job gets harder. So if you work the rehab and you're a rehab CNA, please force the patients to do better so they can go home fast. That's our main goal.
And, it's always, you only have one of two patients. You either have the patient who is working hard because they want to go home, or you have the patient that's doing nothing because they like being here and having everybody take care of them. And those are the instances when you have to set boundaries. This is not a long-term care facility. You can't stay here forever. You have to get to the point where you can go home, or you will be sent to a long-term care facility.
And that's where they don't want to be, because I work long term, and I don't. A lot of people don't think that long term is the greatest thing, but in some terms, you do have CNAs in there that do work their asses off and their tails off to make sure that their patients are taken care of. Everybody that's in the healthcare, you have your lazy ones and you have your great ones, and so don't judge it by what everybody says. Judge it by what you look at and see what you see. My thing before I go to a facility to work at is I always take a whiff. If it smells clean, then you know you got a good place. But if it smells like urine and feces and a whole bunch of other smells, run away and don't look back. Because I'm telling you, I will not put a loved one in one of those places.
No, but unfortunately, people still have to work them.
Yes.
And, I would never want to see a good aide burnt out in a bad facility, but people get put in bad facilities. So we still need to have good aides in those facilities.
Well, that's why you always keep your eyes and ears open for everything, not just something. But me personally, if I smell urine and it's a strong odor, I'm not, because that means there's not hardly anybody that's taking care of the patient.
Right.
But if it's not as strong, where you can smell a little bit, it means they're probably short-staffed at that time. Because some facilities I walked in first time and it smelled horrible, but the second time I walked in for something else, it didn't smell as bad. So it all depends on if they're short-staffed. And in the healthcare, you will have some places that work short-staffed. And CNAs do get burnt out quick.
If you let that happen.
Exactly.
I think as I've gotten older, I don't know about you, because when I first started as a CNA, I had a young family. I had 4 boys, and I worked suicide shifts, which was just Saturday and Sunday. I worked 38 hours on Saturday and Sunday.
Oy.
So that I could be home Monday through Friday with my kids. And that was really hard. But for me, it was worth it because my end goal was to be at home, with my boys. And like on Monday mornings, once I got them off to school, I slept all day because I had to make up for that sleep I missed on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
But I got burnt out quickly. And I think over the years, I've learned how to balance that out. Because like now, we do 12s. Yep. And sometimes I'll work 4 12s. A lot of times I'll work 4 12s.
Well, occasionally, I work 5 and 6 days a week.
I was just going to say, occasionally I'll work 5 12s. But then I know if I do that for 3 weeks, I need to not do that and have my 4 days off so that I can just rest my body and get some much needed sleep. Because if I don't, then I have shitty days that I take out on my dog, and it's not her fault.
Exactly, and that's where it's hard, especially when you're working the healthcare. They say bring your work at work and your home at home. There are some times when you work so much and you see some of these patients, and these patients will treat you like shit.
Some of them will if you let them, absolutely.
And the thing is it takes a toll on you, and then you're mentally stressed, and then you're physically stressed because you got some patients that don't want it, like you mentioned earlier, are lazy, wants everything taken care of, and have you pick them up and stuff. So your body's taking the toll, and you're like, what the hell? Your body and your mind's like, no. So yes, if you, like me, for instance, I work 6 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week. I take 1 month off where I literally I'll work 4 days and take the other days off.
Right.
That's my day to rest and do whatever. Because I do have a family I also have to take care of and cherish too. And, and it's not easy, especially when you have a wife at home that's not the greatest in health, and you got to try to help her out the best she can. You got to balance everything out.
Absolutely, you have to. And just as my own personal example, because I didn't work today. Obviously, I'm here.
Yep, same here.
But I've started such a pattern with my dog that we get up every morning at 4:00, and we get up, and I take her out, and she uses the bathroom, and yada yada yada. Yesterday, I thought, well, I'm going to get to sleep in tomorrow. That's exciting. I don't have to meet up with Tank until 12 or 1, so I can sleep in. No, the dog decided we're not sleeping in. And so she woke me up at 5:00. And the more I tried to go to sleep, the more annoying she was, until the point where I was literally angry at the dog because I wanted to sleep in. Mm-hmm. And I said to my boyfriend, I said, I love my dog. But today, I do not like her because I didn't get the chance to sleep in. So it's really important that you do find that balance. Work as much as you want, but be sure you find the time to give your body the chance to recuperate.
Exactly, and that's why, like for instance, some things that, when you're working healthcare or any job, you guys got to stop and don't focus on all work and no life. Have a balance of things that you keep enjoying because that's what keeps you moving and forward and not getting burnt out as much. Like for me, I'm a fat guy. I love to bake, and I make the amazing chocolate chip cookies.
They're pretty good.
But I also make other things, and I also play video games. I read books. I go out with my wife to the mall or go see a movie with my boys.
You're an old man. Nobody goes to the mall anymore.
I know, but we go to the movies. There's a place in Henderson, Cinedome 12, Tuesday all day long. If you guys are in Las Vegas area and you want a cheap movie, Tuesday all day long at Cinedome 12. No, they did not pay me to say this, but tickets are $5.
This is how old I am. I remember when they built Cinedome 12, and I took my kids there to see one of the Star Wars movies, like one of the newer ones.
She's old.
Yeah. Yep, we walked from our apartment over to the movie theater. Oh my God, I'm old.
But yeah, so that's one thing that you guys, CNAs, or any job that you guys do, stop and do something that you enjoy because that keeps you moving and keeps you not so burnt out. Like my dad would say, you reap the rewards when you work hard, but always reward yourself also. Because there are some people that just work, and they get burnt out, and then they're like, what the hell happened?
Right. So I like to tell people I'm a lazy off-dayer.
Me too. I just sit at home and do nothing.
I have video games. I just got my PS5, so I play a lot of video games and stuff. And I have classwork that I'm doing. But I really like to just veg on the couch on my days off. That's how I reinvigorate myself.
Body and mind.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, a hot bath sometimes. Mm-hmm. Just any of those things that...
I'm too fat for a hot bath. I got to get one of those garden giant tubs to fit in.
That's what I have.
I got a little itty bitty tub.
Oh, no. Mine's one of those big garden tubs. It doesn't have jacuzzi jets, though. I wish it did.
And here's what's messed up with my tub. I just put a cup of hot water in it. I sit down and the water goes over the tub anyway.
Oh, stop it. Let's talk about, because this always cracks me up. Let's talk about a Hoyer.
Oh, boy.
So when I started as a CNA, the Hoyer was hydraulic. Like the car jacks, they were hydraulic. And instead of the fancy slings that they have now, you had a sling, but then it was chains. Yep. Honest, they look like bike chains with hooks on the end that hooked to the Hoyer. And in order to get somebody up, you pumped it like you do when you're taking a tire off a car. And then when you wanted to put them in bed, you pushed it forward and the hydraulics moved the Hoyer down. Yeah, but you got to be careful with those because and they still have some in facilities still. If you push it too fast, they'll drop fast. Right. You had to learn a good balance, which is one reason why I freak out about the Hoyer. Because I learned how to Hoyer people in with those, feel like there was never any good control. Right. So I don't like to drive the Hoyer because That's why you asked for me. It is. You or there's one other coworker that I asked because I trust you guys. But I just never felt like there was any control with those old Hoyers. So the older ones are more scarier. They are. They had to lift. I was back in the day. I was 280 pounds, I believe, at that time when I first started, and I was the biggest in the class. And of course, they had to jack me up, move me to another space, and there wasn't just a little space. They had to move me from one side of the bed, go around the bed, and to the other side of the bed, so that I could feel how it felt like hanging. So, and I had an amazing teacher. I can't remember her name, but God bless that woman. She taught me amazing things. That's one reason why I'm such great with the Hoyer, because I know how it feels. And that's why a lot of patients now in my facility where I'm at, I have to go from one hall to another hall to assist the patient because she does not trust anybody else with a Hoyer but me, because I don't make her in pain. I make her relax. And then on our hall that we work, also, same thing. I have another patient there that wants me there if I'm there because I make it more comfortable and make it more relaxing for them because I've experienced things. And I recommend every CNA to experience what all CNA or patients have to go through because you'll have more understanding of what we go through or the patients go through.
And that's one thing I have to praise about my teacher that taught me. I had to eat pureed food, being
Me
fed
too.
to with blind glasses, earbuds, and gloves, and but fed pureed food and pureed drink. Now, the nectar thickening is not that bad.
Okay.
But
I
just
disagree, but
just
all right.
saying, I got a sweet tooth, so, But anything else, it was like, oh my God, it's like eating baby Gerber food. So, long story short, experience what the patients go through, you'll have a better understanding on how to take care of somebody
Absolutely.
in that circumstance.
Absolutely. And I recommend that, like, in any instance, not just with the Hoyer. You mentioned the puree food. My
Yep.
class did that too. Every stage of food we had to eat.
Yep.
Not just try, we had to eat.
Yep.
Because, my instructor wanted us to know, like, what it felt like.
The texture, the taste,
right,
and
to
everything.
swallow that pureed food. Oh, it's so yucky. But
I don't recommend the peas. Yeah.
no, well, I don't recommend peas in general.
Or the meat.
But it's yucky. Really quick, I just want to remind everybody to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe. I'm working on the website. I was going to say wetsuit. Oh my gosh.
She's got a dirty mind, guys.
I'm working on the website and hopefully have it up and running by this weekend. Working on a newsletter. Whole bunch of fun stuff. So give us a follow. Keep up with us. And if you have any questions, any comments, if you think Tank is full of shit.
I am, by the way.
Or, you have anything that you want to say, just drop us a line and let us know. So, yeah, the Hoyer, and it's not just the Hoyer these days. Now there's the sit and stand. And have you ever used one of those?
Oh, the sit to stand. You have two forms. You have the one where the patient has to pull themselves up, which is non-electronical. And then you have the electric ones. And I really love those sit to stand machines because it saves your back tremendously, especially like guys like me that are the big guys that have to help come pick people up.
And I don't disagree with you, but here's my issue with the sit and stand. Now, I understand the purpose of the Hoyer, especially if you have bariatric patients who can't put any weight on their legs. I get that. But I think it is my personal opinion that the sit and stand, and if there's anybody out there that disagrees with me, let me know. I think the sit and stand encourages people who could stand not to.
To a point, I agree with that, but to another point, I don't, because it does help them stand on their own to get their more strength on their legs. That's why I like the one sit to stand that's non-mechanical, because they have to literally pull themselves up and they have to stand for a few seconds so that we can put the butt seats down for them, which is what goes behind the people's butts, so they can sit down.
Hence the name.
But they still have to hold themselves up enough, so they still have to put some pressure on their legs to keep themselves up.
And
because if they sit completely, they're gonna slide down.
Well, and I understand that, but Joe is getting up out of bed, so you get him on the sit and stand.
Joe is just metaphorically.
Just a fictional, not my coworker. Anyway, you get Joe onto the sit and stand, right? And he says, I need to use the bathroom. So you take him into the bathroom and you get him up and you move the butt seat and he sits on the toilet, does his thing, you get him up. So wouldn't it have been better to help Joe learn those steps to the bathroom?
What if they can't walk?
Stop. So we'll just use where we work because it's rehab. The goal is to get them to walk again.
Right, but I always look at the care. You gotta. This is one thing that a lot of CNAs don't do that they should do is look at their care plan. And if it's not on the care plan, but they say they could do it, talk to your therapists that work with them because they can help you out a lot too.
Oh, a shout out to our therapy department. All of them. Speech, OT, PT, they are all amazing. Every facility should have a therapy department the way we do.
They're amazing. I see people coming in, not walking at all, and then not even 3 months later getting up and walking on to the bathroom.
So we had a patient that just went home recently who was here in our rehab facility for 2 years because he had a stroke.
Yep.
He couldn't do anything.
I remember had to Hoyer him and everything.
Yep, he had a feeding tube because he couldn't eat. He had to be Hoyered into
He was on pure
chair.
aid when I got here.
Was he?
Yep.
It was, he was a textbook result of a stroke. And it really looked like he was never going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So with the help of our amazing therapy team, he left this week.
Yep.
He went to
another facility.
He went to a long-term care facility, but he could stand. He graduated from the feeding tube to regular meals.
Solid food,
Yeah.
not pureed or mechanical soft.
He talked just fine. He lost the use of his arm and his leg, but it didn't stop him. Once we got him up and put him in his wheelchair, off he went. You didn't see him for the rest of the day.
Not until it was time to go put him
Until
back
he
to
was
bed.
ready to go to bed.
And
Yeah.
I love patients like that because they wanted to, and he still says he's going to walk.
Yep.
He says he's going to walk, and I believe he's going to walk.
Absolutely.
And where he went to the facility, I was told they do have a amazing therapy team over there too.
Yeah.
So hopefully it works out for him. I'm praying for the best for him. I pray for all my patients out there. I even have some patients that still contact me after they leave because that's how I treat my patients. I treat my patients like my family. I love all my patients.
And therapy, the therapy departments, if a facility has therapy, CNAs should use that as another tool.
Yep.
You know, if we have new patients that come in and they say, oh, I want to get up and go to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, hold on there. Let me go down and talk to physical therapy. Because if they haven't done an assessment, I can't get you up.
Exactly.
And, you know, I'll go down and I'll talk to, you know, one of the therapists and they'll give me the rundown, what they can and can't do, you know, minimum assist, max assist. We haven't seen them yet. And I always let them know, oh, well, this patient wants to get up and walk. So those are the people, I mean, not that they don't focus on everybody. They do. I don't mean it like that. But they make sure that they're working with these people that want to get up and walk so that they can at some point get up and walk.
Exactly. And the one cool thing I like about our therapy team, and it's really cool, and I think all facilities should have this, is if you have questions or want to learn more about therapy, the therapy team will help you learn how body mechanics on helping the patients and yourself where both you guys are not hurting.
Right.
And that is one thing, like I said, like Maddie said, shout out to our therapy team. Amazing. All the staff, I'm not kidding you. Amazing therapy team. Amazing.
Absolutely. And they will always answer a question.
Always.
If I see them get a patient up, if I happen to be walking by or whatever, I always ask them, wait, how'd you get them up? What did they do? What did you do? You know, and they will.
That's the only thing that makes me upset is when they get them up, they don't put them back to bed, so we have to try to figure out how to put them back to bed. That's the only downfall that I have with our therapy.
Well, there's a couple of times when there's been patients that have been screaming in the dining room, and the therapist will be like, oh, do you want me to put them back to bed? And I'm like, yes, please take them back to bed. So, yeah, we have a pretty great therapy department. I think we're kind of blessed in that aspect.
And I recommend all CNAs to get into some type of physical therapy training of some sort, even if just a little side training to become an RA, because I'm also not just a psych aid, a long-term aid, short-term aid, rehab aid. I'm also restorative aid, which is a lot of people don't understand this. It is a nursing term, but part of therapy. It's not therapy itself. Our restorative aid is more nursing on the medical form to keep the bodies moving.
Right, and it usually if anybody takes restorative aid class, it usually just gives the CNA another level. It's the basics of ADLs and beyond the things that you learned in school, so that you can continue to help. Like, I think that's really important in our case because we work in rehab.
Yep.
So I think it's important to make sure that even when somebody can't get out of bed, we're helping them, accomplish their goals as much as we can, and keeping muscles from atrophying and that kind of stuff. So
exactly. And remember, doing that on charting also, remember with that, you touch a patient, anything you do, make sure you chart it. Even if it's one time, you have to chart saying that you assist the patient. Now, the facilities don't do that, and that's where a reminder I'm letting everybody know. Because if you want to get paid, you have to chart properly also. This is where a lot of CNAs get screwed up and go, independent. We don't get paid for independent.
Right.
We get paid for setup. So always remember that too. I've talked to an MDS nurse about that. And she actually gave me kudos for that because she says not a lot of CNAs know that.
I hate charting. I hate charting.
That's why I try to help.
It's easy to be a CNA. I think it's easy to be a CNA. Maybe
At first, in the beginning, it was rough.
But I got a point. it's easy to be a CNA and to come to work and do my job. To get people up, to help them, all that stuff. That's easy. To sit down at the computer and remember, so did so-and-so, did they get up? Did they put their pants on?
Oh, recommending, and I've seen Maddie have this, have a pamphlet and pen on you and write this down because you will forget. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you got an amazing memory. Sometimes you will forget because CNAs, there are days where you start from 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. You will have a non-stop run. Then there are times where you go to 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock and you have a space where you're busy, then you're off for a little bit. It goes slow. Then busy again, then it's slow. Then it's busy, then it's slow. Always remember to write something down, notes to help you pass that, because I've done it in the past where I've forgotten. Like, shit, did they poop? Did they pee? Shit. So I would have to run back, talk to the patient, and then they get annoyed because you're like, didn't you ask this already? Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. Okay, well, yeah, I had a large bowel. It was formed. So remember, just have a little notepad and write it down so it saves you. But what cracks me up is some of these CNAs are busting their ass so hard, running so hard, that they sit down at the computer, they're charting, doing their thing, and then all of a sudden they start dozing off because they're so tired. And I'll admit, I've done it once or twice, at least a week, every week. But it depends because, like I said, you're on the go nonstop. And I'm not kidding you. Like I said, I love being a CNA. I love my patients. I love my staff. But like I said, there are days where you're going to be so tired. So I will recommend to have a Monster or whatever, coffee or a 6, or get up and walk around for a minute to wake up because you don't want to get yourself in trouble and getting written up for that stuff.
Right. So, yeah, I've seen a couple of CNAs doze off at the computer. And that's what I do. I try to do as much as I can and then get up and go walk outside.
Yep.
And then come back in. I don't know what it is. And the notepad thing, I started that a long time ago.
So I need to get one.
I have a notepad for my notes and Post-its for the nurses.
Which is another good thing to have because sometimes nurses do forget. Because just recently, I told a nurse about a patient wanting a pain pill, and 30 minutes later, the patient's ringing again, and I says, hey, so-and-so, did you get so-and-so her medication? She goes, no, I totally almost forgot about it. I just got busy because I had to write a report on a patient. So that is a good thing to have, too, is Post-it notes so that you can leave it on the nurse's trolley, cart, whatever, so that they can say, oh, that's right, I got to get this medication to this patient.
Right.
It's not their fault. They forget. It's just when you got so much going on at once, you're a human, you're going to forget.
Right. And a lot of times the nurses will say, oh, no, that's fine. You don't have to write it down. Just tell me. I write it down anyway. And I stick the Post-it on their computer because then that way there's no way for them to say, oh, I totally forgot. I'm like, how did you forget? It's right there in front of you on a purple Post-it. All right. So that's it for today. We're going to wrap up.
Tip of the day, I'm going to tell you, when you're feeding a patient, remember, feed them as you want to be fed or feed them like a baby. You don't want them choking, so feed them at a slow pace because I've seen people shoving food down their throat and next thing you know, they're coughing up food and spitting out food. And if you want to shower with food, speed the food up all you want. But recommending, just remember, feed your patients slowly.
Right, take your time.
Because sometimes it doesn't, unless the patient says, feed me, I'm hungry, and their mouth is still open, that's when you shove the food in. But not when they're still chewing.
Right. Yeah, you got to let them take their time. Just because you're in a hurry doesn't mean they're in a hurry.
Exactly.
All right, do you have a confession?
Confession of the day. Always dodge yourself from urine. Because I have turned some patients. It was a couple months ago we had a patient, and she didn't warn me that this patient had a bladder issue, and every time we turned him, he peed.
Oh, I remember that.
So I got done changing this patient, and I looked like I wet myself. So, recommending of the day, always put a washcloth or something down there. If you don't, they're going to pee.
So, and that's a really good tip, because I had all boys.
Yep.
So I learned when they were little, because boys pee up and girls pee down. So the first time my oldest son did that, my mom said, oh, just put a rag on there. And, so I learned that, but I don't always apply that as an adult.
Right.
But that's a really good tip. Just put a towel there if
or
the person
another
has an
brief, or
issue.
just
Yeah.
Don't put a dirty brief down there.
No.
Because that's, UTIs caused that way. So remember.
All right. So that's it for episode number 2.
Da-da-da-da-da.
This is Tank and Maddie CNA Chronicles. I'm Maddie.
I'm Tank.
Have a good night.